Alrighty, in this video we're going to tackle the rest of the styling for the project, which mainly means we're going to be focused on styling our buttons. So to start with, we have a lot of changes we want to make to the standard button. So let's jump over to the code and get to it. So right below our calculator buttons here, we're going to create our button properties. So we're just targeting the element button, not the class. So make sure there's no period there. So first thing, we're going to give it a min height of 50 pixels. And we're going to increase the font size to be 20 pixels. And we'll maintain the font weight of 100. Keep in mind that for buttons, they have their own font properties. So if you want to change it to be the font family you're using elsewhere, you'll have to explicitly change the font family. But for me, I'm going to leave it. I'm going to eliminate the border, so I'm going to give it a border of none, but I will give it a border radius of 5 pixels to give it slightly rounded corners. I'm going to give it a cursor pointer to make it look like we can actually click on it. And then lastly, I'm going to give it a background color. So I'm going to start out with gray, but we're going to use gray for our operators, and we want this to be a little bit lighter. So I'm just going to hover over it. And using Visual Studio Code, I'm just going to drag this until it's lighter. Yeah, I'd say about there is good. Okay, so we can save that and check it out. All right, so that's looking a lot more like a calculator with our bigger buttons. You can see them when I hover over them, that we have the little hand cursor happening here. Okay, so now we want to actually change the operator. We want to make the color to be a little bit darker to distinguish them from our number buttons. So let's jump back, and below our button, we are going to target our operator class. So dot operator, curly brackets, and we're going to give this a background of just gray. You can change the colors up however you want, of course, in your project. I encourage you to experiment with colors. And we're also going to change this color to be white, just to contrast our numbers text being black. So let's save that and check it out. All right, so that's looking a lot better. I like the way that this is a darker gray. It stands out a little bit more. But you know what? The operators themselves are very small. So let's make those a little bit bigger. So we're going to also add in a font size of 30 pixels. Save that and check it out. All right, so that's definitely looking a lot better. Next, we want to change the color of the clear button. We want this to be red instead of the number color gray. So we can jump back, and below our operator, we're going to make a property for our class clear. And we're going to give it a background color. We want it to be a red-ish color, but we don't want it to be fully red. So we can kind of just drag it back a little bit here. We want to make it kind of bright still, maybe something like that. Okay, and because this is such a bright color, we're also going to change this font color to be white as well. So we can save that now and check it out. Okay, cool. So that's good. It stands out. Next thing, we want our equal sign to be like a nice green color. We want it to stand out from the rest of our operators. So we can do that as well. Let's jump back. I have a very specific color in mind, but again, for all the colors, feel free to change them up. So I'm going to do an RGB of 13,206, 87. All right, cool. Let's save that and check it out. All right, nice. So we have a very nice green color. It contrasts our red color nicely. And we have our darker gray for our operators. All right, so I would say that that's looking really good on the color front. But now I want some visual feedback to the user when they hover over the buttons as well as when they click on the buttons. So let's start with dealing with the hover. So back in our code, we're actually going to scroll up, and right below our button styling, we are going to create button : and then hover to target our hover pseudo class on the button. So every time our button is hovered over, it will apply this styling. So we're just going to use a filter, and we're going to give it a brightness of 110%, meaning it's going to get 10% brighter when we hover over it. So if we save that and check it out, we can see that it's very obvious now when I'm hovering over the buttons, but we can see that in our clear button, it's really not obvious because it's so bright to begin with. So we can actually change that one up. And if we go back and below our clear property here, we're going to create a similar thing. So clear with the pseudo class of hover, and we're going to use our filter brightness, but this time instead of 110%, we're just going to give it 90%. So it's going to get darker. Save that and jump back. And you can see now that's much more obvious that we are hovering over the button. Excellent. Now, there are two more things. When I click on a button, we can see that we have this outline, which I don't really want. And we also want the button to actually kind of look like it's being pressed into the page. So we can do that with a transform on the active class. So let's take care of both of those things now. So back up here, right below hover, we are going to use button and then the pseudo class of active. And then we're going to have a transform, and this is going to be translate. I'm going to scroll down here, translate capital Y. So that is the up and down value, the Y axis. And we're just going to give it 1 pixel. So that means it's going to go down 1 pixel every time it's clicked on. And below that, we're going to also target our pseudo class button focus. And we want this to be outline of none to get rid of that outline. So let's save that and jump back. Okay, and now when we click on the button, we can see that it's actually getting indented and we no longer have an outline. All right, so that is looking great. The last thing is, let's just double check our mobile responsiveness while we're still working on our CSS. So we can see here that there's already kind of an issue. Our entire calculator does not fit within our mobile view, and this is for our large phone, our Pixel 2 XL. So in order to fix that, we're going to go back into our CSS, and at the very bottom, we're going to create a media query. So you always want to create your media queries at the bottom because they need to be able to override anything else within the CSS file. So we're going to create this media query for large smartphone in the vertical orientation. And in order to create a media query, we're going to use the @ sign, then media, screen, and bracket max dash width, colon, and then 600 pixels. So that means anything less than 600 pixels will be affected by this styling. And we want to target our calculator itself, so our parent element, and we want to change the width to 95%. So if you remember up at the top here, we had a width of 400 pixels. That's too wide for our mobile phone. So now we're changing it to 95% to give us a little bit of space on the left and right. So if we save that now and jump back, we'll need to close our DevTools and then reopen them again. And now we can see that it is fitting very nicely in our mobile view. And we can double check for iPhones. That's the great thing about using a percentage, 95%, is that no matter the width, it will always have 2.5% on the left and 2.5% on the right and use the remaining 95%. All right, perfect. So that's pretty much it for our CSS. In the next video, we're going to get started on our functionality. I'll see you in that one. Bye for now.